Welcome everyone to our guide and our event on the ultimate guide to freelancing, and our event on how to grow your freelance career in 2022, brought to you by the Work Crowd. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. It's a rather special day because not only am I joined by a panel made up of the Work Crowd team and associates, but also we are launching our guide on how to freelance. So it's fantastic that we've had such a great uptake on sign-ups, but this is a three-part series that we're running. Today, obviously, on how to grow your freelance career, and then secondly, on client relationship management, and then thirdly, on how to be a happy freelancer. So please do sign up to those other events. I think that how to be a happy freelancer is really important in today's world. There's been lots and lots of changes happening, and we want to teach people how to collaborate better with freelancers and manage diaries and understand the challenges of the freelancing world and how to get the most out of it. So because we're launching the guide today, we will be sending this guide out before. It's almost like a pre-launch today, so it comes live tomorrow, but we'll be sending out to this group, so you'll have a copy of that. But just as way of introduction, my name is Madeleine Weightman. I'm a co-founder of the Work Crowd, and I'm joined by Madeleine Weightman, another co-founder of the Work Crowd, Cameron Hartwell, who's one of our customer success managers, and Mel Fitzsimmons, who is a digital freelance marketing expert and also a member of the Work Crowd team. So today, how to grow your freelance career in 2022. We want to explore the trends that are happening currently, but also get under the skin of how to business develop, how to utilize all the tools and hacks out there that we're seeing as the Work Crowd and what we're seeing through our freelancers, and really how to stand out in the crowd. We've had lots of questions also around how to pay, how you should charge, how you should utilize your network, and how to build your brand. So hopefully our team can answer those things today, but please do fire lots of questions. I'm here to feed the questions into the team. So use the functionality, the chat and the Q&A functionality at the bottom of the screen. So let's get stuck in. Madeleine, there's the world's been changing from legislation, IR35, economic changes, all sorts, maybe potentially political changes this week as well. What trends are you seeing in the freelance world? And is it a good time to start freelancing?
So I personally think there has not been a better time for quite some time. So actually this morning, just ahead of today, I was looking at some of our stats, and we've had a 50% increase in new projects registered this year when I look at the same period last year. And actually, I think, thinking about why is that, I think a lot of businesses have become more comfortable with actually working with people remotely, and freelancers have almost had that head start. The world has gone remote, but freelancers have been doing it for eons and are perhaps that little bit better at it. I think likewise, when thinking is it a good time, if we're looking at that marketing, communications, PR industry specifically, businesses coming out of COVID or lockdown, hasn't gone away, but obviously we're now living with it, are really rethinking, how do I better communicate to my customer, re-looking at their communications and their marketing. So I think that in turn has meant there's been an increase in demand for freelancers. Likewise, you touched on it, changes in legislation. So with regards to IR35, we're a year on. We did actually a great seminar on it not that long ago. And we're definitely seeing the effects that IR35 has had on the market. So I think what we're seeing is that actually the combination of IR35 and COVID meant a lot of those freelancers who perhaps were in fixed term contracts, insecurity of COVID, the fact that IR35 was meaning that they're having to go on the payroll, have gone back into permanent employment. So you've actually, as a result of that, had really a bit of a shortage, a lack of freelance talent, which at the same time has coincided with coming out of COVID, a huge increase in demand from clients looking for flexible freelance talent. So all the more, I think, there's huge opportunities out there. I think if I look at like the last 18 months and general trends, so around IR35, but also I think freelancing maturing, we're seeing increasingly a move much more towards fixed price work with clients, and a move away from day rates typically. And I think that's only a good thing, because actually it creates more opportunities with a more value fixed-based system for freelancers, but actually it's a win-win for clients. I think another key trend is around freelancers actually building out their businesses and growing. So working collaboratively with other freelancers. And I suspect that in part has, one, been fueled by demand, but secondly, actually what I touched on earlier on, that freelancers have been working remotely for ages. They're very good at it, and clients have become more comfortable with working with people remotely via video chat, etc. So yeah, I think all in all, it's a great time to freelance. I'd love to see more younger people coming through into freelancing, and I think there's huge opportunities out there for them. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Madeleine. Lots of topics I think we can deep dive into as well throughout the discussion. Mel, I'd like to go to you next. You've now developed your own business freelancing. You came from more of a permanent background initially. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to getting into freelancing, perhaps to inspire those that are thinking about it?
Yeah, sure. So I took the leap from a full-time permanent role to freelancing, funnily enough, after being offered a promotion, which didn't come with a salary increase. So I think that made me soon realize that to get true value out of myself and my work, I needed to work for myself. And that kind of what pushed me into it. I kind of had not luxury, but I kind of went down to 3 days permanent first. So the company I worked for were happy to do that initially with me. So I did 3 days perm, and then I did 2 days freelancing to start my kind of freelance career. So I used those 2 days to build up clients, to reach out to my network, to try and get myself to a point where I could freelance, because I still needed to be able to support myself financially. And then actually after 6 months, I went full freelance, and I built myself up to a point where I could cover my bills. With I think literally about 1 or 2 clients, and then I just took that leap, kind of quit my job, and then went full freelance, and used the rest of the days then to again continue that growth and just continue building it up to grow it. And yeah, 4 years on, over 4 years on now, haven't looked back, and feel like it's one of the best decisions I ever made.
Great, good. And have you noticed that the market has shifted for you this year?
Yeah, I think the past 2 years has gone a bit crazy. I work in the digital sector. So I think, like Madeleine was saying, the kind of move of COVID and everyone starting to work remote really kind of pushed everyone digitally as well, and realizing actually suddenly digital business was really important, because at that period when no one was going to shops and no one was doing anything, that was where they were going to make their money. So from the digital perspective, just suddenly there was a huge demand, and there really wasn't. There's really not, and I don't think still is enough talent out there, the amount of work there is. I actually last year started building myself up to kind of move towards more of a consultancy agency style, as well as Alice said, Madeleine said, bringing in working collaboratively with our freelancers because of the demand. So yeah, I think it is a really great industry, a really good time at the moment in the market. And definitely digital and marketing is kind of going crazy.
Good, thanks for sharing that, Mel. Cameron, I'd like to come to you next. Obviously, as a customer success manager, you're talking to clients constantly about briefs. And on our platform, we have over 8,000 freelancers. Some are earning just from the platform alone over 40,000 a year. So some freelancers are really doing very well and utilising the platform and getting most out of it. From your experience of working with freelancers and clients, what makes a freelancer stand out from others? I mean, there's a huge demand, as Mel and Madeleine were saying at the moment, but still you want to stand out from the crowd. What do you think helps those freelancers to really stand out?
Yeah, so as you're saying, we've a lot of freelancers on the platform, and depending on the project, it can be quite competitive. So in terms of standing out, I think sort of the key things for freelancers to come back to, obviously on their profile, is things like keeping it up to date. I know it could be a bit of a pain, but like just adding, say, if you work with a new client and they were really happy with the work you did for them, ask if you can get an endorsement for your profile. Ask if you can just have a few words that you can put up on there, and add that that experience to your profile. Keep building upon it, and I think just also highlighting any transferable skills you have. So you might have certain experience in one sector, but did you do social media? Was it media relations? Just highlighting those skills, just showing to people that you do have that expertise. And just taking advantage of things like, you can add, say, past work, examples of past work to your profile. So adding a little portfolio if that's relevant to the type of work you do. So I say those are the key things, keeping it up to date. Just highlight, don't have it too short, and I suppose don't have it too long. I suppose it's just trying to find that balance as well. But like highlighting things that you've done, and if you have any statistics that you can use of like, what you've achieved for a client, I think that's always going to go down well. So I find that clients, when I'm onboarding clients and say they don't know that much about the work crowd itself, what they want to know is, can I trust these freelancers? Like, what's the brands have they worked with before? So you want to get that across as well.
I think it's a very good point, Cameron, in terms of trust. It's all about, if you haven't worked with someone before, building trust, and how do you build that trust? So getting references from your previous work is fundamental. I guess if you're new to freelancing, you can get references when you're a permanent employee. So let's think about how to grow this business. You've decided to take the plunge of freelancing. You've looked at different platforms. Mel, what are your different strategies for growing a book of business? I mean, you talked a little bit about when you first started, how you had your permanent work until you got some work going. But, how are you going about building business? Is it networking? How do you sort of build yourself out once you've got an SME?
So I think network is the most important thing. And as I said, initially, I used my network when I first went freelancing. So reached out to anyone I had a professional relationship with and just let them know I was going freelance. Like, I'm looking for opportunities. You just have to put yourself out there. I went on LinkedIn. I made frequent posts just saying I was available for work. And then nowadays, now I've kind of built my freelancing career up, I still use my network, but slightly differently. And actually, similarly to what Cameron said, I will go to my clients and get testimonials after I've done work with them, get reviews on my Google account. And then I will then use those testimonials and those reviews to reach out to potential clients in similar sectors. And having those brands, those reviews, those testimonies gives you that credibility in that sector. And it might not be that they'll come back to you that day and that they want you, but you kind of put the feelers out, letting them know you're around, you've worked in the sector, you've got experience. And it could be a bit of a delayed timeline, but 6 months down the line, when they do need that person, they'll think of you. And I connect with them and keep putting them out. So that's like kind of slow burn away. And then the other one is using, you don't have to always look externally for clients. You can, use your current network, your current clients, and seeing how you can build on the services you're offering them. So the clients that you have currently are, they already trust you, they're already paying you, they already see value in what you're doing. And if you can, look through this and provide kind of a strategy or an idea for something that could take their business to the next level. So for example, if you're running organic socials and actually you think like a paid campaign could really boost their performance or help them reach some of their targets quicker, if they trust you and you've been giving them value, then they'll potentially go work with you and do more services. So I think like that's a second, like a really important one that people don't often do, and they kind of think once I've got a client, that's it, I do that for them, park it, move on while I do that. But actually they're like, you already have that relationship, you already have that value, they already trust you. You can really upsell and work with them, and take a £1,000 client to a £2,000 client a month if you just can work them. And obviously not everyone has the budgets, but I think that's a really good way. I think they're the kind of two main ways. I think, like I said, upselling, upskilling. So again, in the digital world now, everyone's looking for a kind of spectrum of services that really complement each other. So again, offering, if you do social media, you want to do paid, or if you do PPC and you can offer SEO, like building up your skills and what you offer in your services is a really important, I think, way to grow this year. I think that's what people want, to find someone who they can kind of do a one-stop shop for all of the whole campaign. And that might be bringing in freelancers to work with you alongside, like white labeling or working collaboratively, where you kind of bring the project together. But I think to win a lot of work nowadays, you need to be able to offer a lot of services that complement each other, or know people who can do it as well. And sometimes even just having the contacts of someone on working collaborative or freelance that you can say, oh, you need the website, you need PPC and you need SEO. Yep, I know people who can do that. We can kind of work together on that. I think that's kind of the important thing nowadays, because people don't have the time or the energy to look around for all different types of freelancers to do everything. So they want to just find one person who can help kind of manage the whole thing. So they're kind of the three main things I try and do nowadays, I think.
Yes. You've just opened up a whole host of new questions. My mind is boggling with all of that. All I'm thinking about, these freelancers are probably thinking, gosh, I've got to work with these clients, I've got to upskill myself, I've got to find other people to work with, how am I going to fit all this in?
Well,
you obviously do.
Yeah, it's focusing on one as well. I think, and a lot of freelancers, I think, will probably know it themselves, where they'll have a client say, oh, do you know anyone who can do this X, Y? And I think networking and building your network and stuff, it's kind of the first step, is just get to know other people in your industry and who work on similar things than you. I think that's kind of the first step, really. But
yeah, no, absolutely. And what it's sort of, one of the things that I'd like to point out, it's sort of making me think the agency versus the freelancer. And almost, Madeleine, are you sort of seeing almost these freelancers coming together, forming, in effect, could compete against an agency? Because if they're wanting to upsell and take on these bigger projects, are you seeing that as a sort of a collaboration of freelancers coming together?
Definitely. I mean, it was one of the big trends that we've seen sort of across 2020, 21 and now 2022 is actually freelance members who've been freelance members of the work crowd for some time, who are also now client members, and who are looking to reach out to other freelancers who have got complementary skills, or actually, it could be someone, for example, who complementary in that it sits within that marketing communications mix, but it could be quite a different sort of subsector to exactly that, to add value. Because I think Mel totally has hit the nail on the head, which is that everyone is super busy, and I think when clients come to us, they are looking for specific industry experience. So whether that is, really, like, I'm a tech business, so I want someone who understands tech, but also am I B2B or am I consumer? So actually having that niche, I think, is really key, but then actually having a wider picture in terms of really understanding, okay, so in this industry, what are the different opportunities in terms of how we're going to reach the customer? How can we best communicate to them? And what are the opportunities there for the client in terms of whether it's PR, whether it's digital, whether it's content? And how can we then create a integrated campaign? So let's say we're doing some PR. Well, what are we going to do with that PR afterwards? How are we going to amplify it, and how are we going to best use it? And I think clients or freelancers who position themselves very much like Mel evidently is, in sort of saying, I can help you here, this is my expertise, but actually there's a wider opportunity here, and I have a network, or I have access, say it's via the work crowd, to a network that can best support you and amplify the marketing communications campaign that you're doing. So I think for freelancers thinking forward, there's massive opportunities there.
Great, good. Sorry, Cameron.
So I was just going to say, like, I totally agree. I think one of those benefits of maybe partnering with another freelancer to sort of complement your own skill set is that you're instantly sort of showcasing your value to that client. So whether they've got a reservation about you or they need sort of, that wider skill set, you can straight away come back and say, well, I actually have someone, like I work with, we can do this together. I think that sort of really highlights, that problem solving, and I think if you can do it, if that's all in place already as well, that's sort of seamless sort of action. I think you're going to come across very well to a prospective client.
Yeah, and I think also there's another angle on that as well. Thinking about growth, and if you've already got yourself a point, and you've got availability to take on a smaller project or something, but a big opportunity comes in, and you don't want to say no. There's also looking at it as like, how can you bring in someone even more junior to take on those things that might take up too much of your time, whether it's writing copy for social media posts or even just scheduling them themselves, things like that, which as a senior, or as more of a senior freelancer in that field, doing that thing is going to take up your time, which means you then can't do the full project. Thinking about not saying no to these projects, but how can you bring in more junior people who can do things cheaply and better, can do it at the same level as you could, but means it kind of frees up your time to do the bigger side of the project and where the real value is. And I think it's also looking at that. I think that's quite a good way of growing. It is kind of growing a business, is to be able to take those projects on which feel overwhelming, but how you can still make money in them, but bringing in more junior people to support as well.
Great, thank you. So just another question from the discussion. Would you say therefore it's best to say as an expert, or should we start becoming generalists? And we've sort of touched a little bit on it, but Madeleine, what's your thoughts?
So I think when you are first starting out, it's a big, difficult question. Do I go for whatever I can because actually you want a revenue stream, you want opportunities, you want to create new client relationships? So do you go for that sort of generalist approach, or do you actually say, okay, I'm going to really specialize? Now, personally, from my, I can only talk from my experience of the work crowd, is that I think 90% of the time clients are looking for specialists, but specialists in the sense of they know their industry. I think they do, going back to what Mel touched on, they want someone who perhaps in terms of the skills that they offer is, yes, they know their industry sector and they're specialists in a particular area. So let's say in Mel's case in digital marketing, but they really appreciate individuals who do have a generalist approach in terms of they understand the wider marketing communications piece and how, let's say, digital marketing fits within that, and where other aspects can amplify or best support those efforts. So I think from a freelance perspective, my advice would certainly be that if you can specialize, but keep an eye on the bigger picture, understand, and this is where, going back to what Mel was talking about, networking with that wider community, don't be an island, understand what your peers are doing and how that best supports ultimately your clients, and working in that open collaborative way. And I think ultimately that's where, as a freelancer, you're going to have most success. You can target your clients, understand who your clients are, what they're looking, you best understand their problems, you're best placed to provide the solution that they're wanting. But also you can then dictate much more, because there's a sense of you're adding real value in terms of actually then what you charge.
I mean, it brings me very nicely on to my next question, which was, what's the essence of a good pitch? I think you probably sort of talked a little bit about it there, but you're now in front of clients, or you're putting pitches together. Freelancers can spend a lot of time doing pitches. I know it can be quite soul destroying because they're not getting paid for this work. So how do they do a good pitch, grow their business, but not spend so much of the time they're actually on work that they're not getting paid? What's your advice to freelancers, Madeleine, first of all? Then Mel, I'd love to hear how you actually go about doing it.
So I think just going back to what I said before, if you are quite targeted in your market and what you offer, you can first of all actually really target, these are customers that I can support or best support. I've really got something of value to offer them. I think then understanding what is your USP, what is it? What are the services that you provide? Make sure, as Cameron touched on earlier on, make sure you communicate it, whether that's via the WorkCry platform or whether it's via your social media, your LinkedIn page or your website. Ensure that you communicate what are your services. Don't think about, I've got this experience as an account manager working for this company. Think about those transferable skills and services that you offer. Clients that you've worked for previously doing those things, and ultimately what you've achieved for those clients. Then I think when you're actually at that pitch process, so you need to ensure that you have actually got key information from the client. What are they looking for? What are their problems? What are they looking to achieve? Where are their pain points? What's preventing them getting where they want to be? What internal resources do they have or don't they? And actually, going back to what you said then, Alice, which is, if you're going to spend time on a pitch process, who else are they talking to? How many involved in this pitch process? You don't want to be investing, a day of your time putting together a pitch proposal if you're one of 10 people. So ensure actually you've gathered as much information, and if they haven't been prepared to give you that information from the outset, do you want to actually really invest that time in putting together a detailed pitch? And then I think if they are unsure, so you've asked all those questions and they're a little unsure about what they want or where they want to go or what their budget is or what they can achieve with X versus Y, another approach is actually turn that pitch process into a paid piece of work. So, for example, suggest an initial discovery phase. You can spend half a day gathering this information, talking to key stakeholders, and then another half a day putting a proposal together, which might be, this is option A with this budget, B with that, C with your gold platinum version. So I think as a freelancer, yes, time, your time is your money, is your livelihood. So making sure you've done your due diligence properly before investing your time into something is important.
Great advice. Lots of questions up front. Mel, how do you find that?
Yeah, I think Madeleine kind of just covered it all there, really. But yeah, I mean, just personally, I kind of do really similar to what Madeleine said, but yeah, reaching out, initial call or even initial form. I have a form that I'll send to clients off the back of an initial call, and often it allows them to take their time to fill out those kind of questions rather than using up my time to sit on a call with them for an hour or two. So I have that kind of initial get to know you conversation, but I'll always follow up with a kind of kick-off questions that they can just fill out, that they can just kind of brain dump, and I don't have to spend the time sitting there listening or trying to get it out of them, and it kind of gives them time to think about it all. And then from that, I'll create a proposal, which again, it is, I'll try and keep it the same template for most clients, so you're not spending that time. But within that, I think the most important things that I kind of try and put in there is, giving some sort of information or value where I've looked into the company and can provide something credible, to make them show that I know kind of what I'm talking about, and that they can kind of say, oh, so I've actually given them something, kind of showing them. And that can be anything dependent on whether it's they want social, whether they want PPC or whatever it is, but giving them some sort of value straight up to kind of show my credibility. And then again with that, as Madeleine said, kind of showing similar sectors or similar brands or what you've worked in before, giving that experience kind of piece where like I've worked in XYZ before, I've worked for XYZ before, kind of again gives you that credibility, that value. And then off the back of those questions, again, like Madeleine said, it's kind of providing a kind of proposal or pitch based on what it is they're really after, and having those questions that get down to what their kind of main goals and objectives and revenue, or what it is they're trying to do, so that what I'm pitching, what I'm proposing to them is really providing a value based on that. And then I'll put all of that information in there before I even get to my costs, just so like, you know, they've read through it, you're kind of convincing them as they go along, and then you're providing costs of different value. And I'll always include a kind of, in that proposal is deliverables. So this is what it's cost you, but this is the deliverables I'm going to give you based on that, rather than time. That's why, again, moving away from this time perspective of, oh, you know, I'll give you an X amount of days or hours, but actually the client wants to know what you can achieve. So that's kind of a kind of process I would go through.
Great, thank you for that. I've got a couple more questions, and I'd love to open it up to the audience. So please do use that Q&A section at the bottom, or the chat box to fire questions. We've got about another 15, 20 more minutes left. So I've got a couple of key topics which Mel teed me very nicely up for, which was on pricing. It's a big topic, and it's fundamental to freelancers to maximise their value. We've had other discussions with the Work Crowd events on whether you price based on time or on your outcomes. And I know it's a big topic. I know sometimes clients find it hard to get around outcomes, or but it's a way that we, you know, as the Work Crowd, we try and push freelancers towards that, and clients. Cameron, perhaps you can give me a bit of insight to what you're seeing. Are you seeing both methods at the moment, day rates as well as time as outcomes?
Yeah, I'm seeing both. I think the issue sometimes is that when clients come to us, they have a project in mind. Sometimes maybe they don't come from a marketing or PR background, so they find it difficult to sort of, I don't know, visualize what it will cost. And obviously, you know, we obviously try our best to sort of walk them through it. But sometimes, obviously, a client won't know, and they need to talk to the freelancers first. And I think at that point, that's when the freelancer just needs to take the initiative and sort of, and, you know, as you're saying, get across how they price their work, whether that's value-based pricing or a day rate. And I say also, I suppose it depends as well. Some freelancers, because it may be that for certain work you would charge a day rate, and then other work you're going to charge. You say if it's content, it'll be obviously per blog or over a project. But I say that's the thing with clients. I think sometimes when they don't know, I think the freelancer just needs to take the initiative with it. And I think and be honest and transparent about your pricing. And I think our client will always appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thank you. Are there any pros and cons on each side? Are there any pitfalls that you think, Madeleine, freelancers should look out for on either side of pricing?
So I think when you're new to freelancing, it's quite easy to sort of think about time. So if you're a new freelancer, you think, well, okay, you know, what's my charge out rate? What's the market effectively value of whatever it is that you're offering? But I think there's a limitation there as you grow your business, because you've only got a finite amount of time. And I think also from a client perspective, time is expensive. So going back to what Cameron said, you know, actually, if you think about outcomes or the services that you're going to offer, well, actually, that's what you want. There's a value to that, to the business. So actually, if the value to the business is X, well, yeah, wow, I'm really prepared to pay Y for that. So I think from a freelance perspective, you certainly, as you're growing your business, you want to be thinking much more about fixed price stroke value. I think increasingly we're seeing almost a sort of slight merging. So we're not yet seeing like a true value-based pricing, but much more a fixed fee, but with the freelancer having communicated to the client, okay, so understanding what's the problem, what's the value to the business in delivering X, Y, Z, and making sure that actually when, as a freelancer, we're reporting back on deliverables, etc., that you're communicating that value at all points to the client, because that in turn, going back to what Mel was talking about earlier, gives you that opportunity to then upsell and effectively have a longer term relationship. I think where a time element can then be also useful, though, is if you, as a freelancer, you go down that sort of fixed fee, that you can give an indication of what that might look like from a time perspective. And I think that's useful just to manage the client's expectations. I think everyone's probably, as a freelancer, has had a needy client who's calling them daily or emailing them daily. And actually, if they're only paying for, let's say, 3 days of your time a month, well, that's going to be eating into quite a lot of it. So I think ensuring it's about communication. So actually, when you're looking at your pricing with clients, you're communicating what they're getting, what you're going to deliver for that. And then from a reporting point of view, actually what the reporting structure is. So that if you have a client who actually needs more reporting or wants more regular check-ins, well, actually you build that into what you're going to charge.
Great, thank you, Madeleine. Mel, how do you charge?
I think I similar to what Amanda said, I go down that kind of value base and look based on deliverables. But one thing I just wanted to say, and I think like some of more freelancers who probably going around might agree with me, is sometimes the smaller ticketed clients that come in, that's a £500 a month or whatever it is, are often end up being the ones who need the most amount of time, because they are the smaller business, they are the ones. And I think one thing I've really learned over the last few years of freelancing is sometimes just saying it's not worth going for those clients, because in the end, if you really want to grow, if you take for those on those smaller clients who want hand holding and who need a lot of support, if you're not, as Madeleine said, factoring that price or that time into what you're doing, you will end up spending so much more time on a client that's worth a very small amount of your overall monthly revenue. And I think being able to say no and believing in yourself enough to look for the bigger ticket ones who end up not needing any much help and are quite happy to you just to crack on, end up being more value to you and help you, will give you more time back and also make it easier to grow in the future. So I think probably a hard lesson I learned over the last few years. And as much as you want to take on those kind of clients, and you think it's going to be simple because it might be smaller and it's also thinking about who are you working with, how much do they know, and how much support are they going to need through it, because often you're working directly with the business owner who right fairly needs to know what they're getting for their money, because it's all of their money and they're really passionate about it. And actually that sometimes can be more problematic, I think. So it's really reviewing the value that you think you're going to bring, but also the value that it is to the business. Because if it's a huge amount of value to them, even if it's a small amount of budget, if it's actually all of their marketing budget, then they need, it's so important to them and they're going to be, on it a lot. So I think like the nicest way of putting it is just making sure you understand who you're working with and how they want to work with you when you're factoring in your pricing, and whether actually you think that that's going to be worthwhile to you as a client in the long run.
Yeah, great. And I would have thought also value-based pricing suits people who are probably juggling, when they're able to work. If you want to be able to pick your children up or drop them off, or you're caring for someone, or you're studying, and actually working at between 8 and 11 o'clock at night might suit you, well then actually an outcome-based fee structure would be better than time, because you can't say actually I'm going to be at my desk between 9 and 5. So it's probably case by case a bit as well, but it's great to hear that, and having the confidence really to go, actually, this is my worth. I've had a few questions actually on training and upskilling ourselves. So, you know, are there any good places to look at to find kind of cost-effective ways of training, or free ways in which you can upskill yourself? And that does lead me on to my sort of final topic, which was about investing in your brand and having the time to invest in your brand. And we've talked a little bit about upskilling, but you know, to upskill, you've got to spend the time training. How, you know, any recommendations, Mel, in terms of great ways to find, to train and develop oneself?
Yeah, I think when you're working and you're doing freelancing, and when you get to that point where you've got clients asking you or needing other services, you should slowly get to a point where you're realizing, what's the value in my services, which are the ones that, one, people want the most, and two, that has more value and it takes less time, but you know, people are willing to pay more for it. So upskilling into those services that are going to bring you more income and help you grow from a revenue perspective, I'd say, are the kind of the key ones to be investing in. And then also the trends and where the world's going and where your market is going. I can't speak about, you know, PR or comms, but from a digital perspective, you know, there's a lot. SEO is huge now, and all my clients are now wanting more of that. Paid PPC, I mean, people are moving slightly away from paid social from a Facebook or Instagram perspective, but looking more at like LinkedIn campaigns becoming really big. So once you start understanding where the market's going and what people are wanting, I think that helps you define where you should be putting your time into yourself, and whether that's getting accredited by Google on Google's Academy, whether that's actually going on a Chartered Institute marketing course to get yourself a certificate into certain services, or even if it's just sitting and putting your time in yourself. So you don't have to have a certificate to show you can do something. If you can just do it because you've taught yourself, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there. So I think it's understanding what it is first that you want to upskill in, and why is it important to you. And then there's so many places out there, whether it's just starting on YouTube or whether you actually go down a certificate course.
Yeah. Are you quite disciplined with your time then? Do you block in, you know, on a Friday it's 4 o'clock, I'm going to spend an hour sort of researching, or is it just really attending events and speaking to people?
I think it's something I've really started focusing on in the last year, and realizing that, and kind of, I'm the kind of person who gets carried away with something. So as soon as my interest gets piqued in something, I'll just research and read, and I'm quite self-taught at things. But I have recently, you know, like I said, in the last year, noticed that there are, you know, gaps in my skill base that there's a lot of demand out there for one that can help grow my business. So haven't dedicated time myself. I think that would be a good way to do, but I just kind of get carried away in evenings and doing it when my interest is piqued in it, because I think that's kind of the best way to learn. But I think it's also each to your own of how you are good at it. And I think also, you know, I've been saving for a course that I want to go on, and, you know, investing in that way. And once I get to myself on a certain amount, then I'll put myself into that course. So it's just doing what you can. I think that personally works for you.
Good. Sorry to jump back to the pricing, but just had a question come in. I think it'd be nice to be able to give some advice. Any guidance on value-based pricing for retained clients? I price time, but I'd like to move, but I'm not sure how. Madeleine, have you got any advice on that?
So I think true value-based pricing is really then understanding the value of what you're doing to the client. So let's say, you know, I think when we did, there is an event that we've got on our website that we've got a write-up and a recording. So actually, what I would say is, if you want to learn more, probably go and have a look at that. But true value-based pricing, it is about understanding the value and agreeing with the client what that value is at the outset, and that then links through to price. So let's say the client wants to acquire X many more customers, then you're going to need to have access to key information from the back end, whether that's Google Analytics, etc. An event, well, it could be, well, actually we've got this event and I want to do X amount of ticket sales. know what the value of those ticket sales are. If it's a customer, you must agree what the value of that new customer is. And then you're going to charge a percentage. I think it's generally about 10%. Is that, you might be able to, with that, on that going rate. So that's a true value-based pricing. Now, actually, we tend to see much more of a sort of hybrid, which is a hybrid between fixed price and value. So, and I think with a hybrid, one, you need to understand the value. So that will be actually asking those questions to the client from the outset. So what are their pain points? What are they looking to achieve? What's the implications of them achieving that? So, you know, for example, new customers, is it going to bring X amount of revenue? If it's about PR and reputation, is that feeding into, for example, an investment raise, or you know, so understanding the motivations and the value, and then agreeing actually what effect that would have. So once you get the client's buy-in on that, that makes it so much easier. And then I think it's then looking, there is an element of time. So looking at, okay, well, actually, how much time is this going to take? But within that, then agreeing, for example, a fixed price, which might be based on how much time you need to invest in, but also the value that the customer holds. But I think to get that true buy-in from the customer, you need to really understand what their pain points is. You need to understand actually the implications of what you're going to do, the solution that you're going to provide, and you need to ensure that you're communicating that value all the way along.
Great, thank you. Another question just come through. What's the best way to connect with other freelancers to find partners that complement your services and skills? I don't know who would like to take this from the team, Mel or Cameron.
Cameron? Oh, he's on mute.
Oh, sorry, he's on mute now. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was just about to say, I think obviously LinkedIn is definitely sort of place you want to be. I think LinkedIn, obviously and be active as well. I mean, obviously sort of get your feed to a place where you want it, like where you're seeing interesting articles and all of that, and comment and engage with people. I think that's a good way to sort of obviously meet your sort of wider network and get to know people.
Great, thank you. Mel and Madeleine, you're all jumping in on this one, so I'll let you all.
I agree. I'd say LinkedIn is a really great way to kind of cold reach out to people. There's such good search functions to be able to find some freelancers, but then also, you know, another one I go is like actually local freelance groups. So I'm part of my local Crystal Palace. We have a Crystal Palace freelancers group that we have networking. We meet up, and I've met a lot of people through that with similar skill sets. And then also just already your network. So I have, you know, web developer friends and stuff like that, and I'll always reach out to them to see if they know someone if I'm looking for a particular skill. And I've met a lot of people who I've worked with closely and who we have a kind of bubble of people who will offer kind of find work for each other as well if there's someone's looking for you, and it's a great way to just kind of help with referrals. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people who you already know. And I think people get worried that there's not enough space for everyone if you've got similar, but I think actually lifting each other up is really the best way. And if you might, you know, I've got other digital marketing friends that I would reach out to, and you shouldn't be afraid that they're going to take your work or anything. Actually, if anything, you create more work for each other. Yeah.
Good. Madeleine, what's your thoughts?
I put myself on mute there. So no, I was just very much going to sort of echo what Mel was saying, which is I think, you know, take a multi-pronged attack. So LinkedIn, your network, events, and, you know, increasingly, as I mentioned earlier on, we are seeing more freelancers using the work crowd, and, you know, where they don't perhaps have that network already in place. So actually using the work crowd to connect and reach out to other freelancers that will best complement them.
And how do they do that finally? If they're as a freelancer, can they easily find other freelancers?
Yeah, so they simply just register actually as a client user. In the future, we are planning to sort of to create or to bring about the ability that actually you can just have a single user account, and as a user you can create a profile and pitch for work, but likewise you can connect and collaborate with other freelancers. But for now they would set themselves up as a client and they create a brief, talk about what they're looking for. If they're forward planning, then what we always just ask is actually just communicate that so that actually it manages people's expectations, and you'll then get visibility of other freelancers within our network, and you've got the inbuilt messaging and video chat. So
great. Well, thank you very much to all the team. Just to reiterate, this is part of our launch of our ultimate guide to freelancing. So we will be sending that out, and we will be hosting 2 more events as part of this launch on client relationship management and how to be a happy freelancer. So if you're not signed up, please do sign up. They're going to be great events. And thank you so much indeed to the panel, Madeleine, Mel and Cameron, for joining me this afternoon, and for everyone attending. Goodbye.
thank you. Bye.
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 Take care. Bye bye.